Hello, everyone. I'm back, and this time we get to talk about business skills for doulas. Um, as I mentioned when we were together in class, many people go to a doula training to learn how to do things to help people have babies, but they're not thinking about the fact that to work as a doula, as if you want to make money or maybe have this be your full-time career, there's this huge business side of it because you're going to have your own business as a doula. So I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes or so talking about the kinds of things you need to do to start a business, or the kinds of things you need to do to work as a doula legally in the United States. So the first thing you should know is that you do indeed need to get a business license if you're going to be making money as a doula. Now, different states have different kind of requirements or criteria. In Washington State, there's about 10 different things that if you meet all of them, you don't have to get a business license. But I'm telling you that you're not going to meet all of them if you're making money as a doula. So it's things like making less than a certain amount of money per year, doing business only in your name, not having a separate business name. Things like if you needed to have a license or be registered, which you don't have to do as a doula. But if you're going to work as a doula and take money for your services, you're going to need to get a business license. And so the information that I'm giving you is going to be primarily based in Washington State or based on Washington State laws, but you still have to do the homework because the laws and the regulations and things change over time. So I'm not a tax advisor or a business advisor or an attorney, so you have to do your own kind of homework, okay? So one of the first things you'd want to do as a doula is to get a business license. And you can get a business license either in your name, your personal Carrie Kenner name, or you can make up a business name like Big Belly Services. And if you're going to make up a business name, you need to check and make sure that nobody else in your state is using that name. And you also even might want to do a Google search and make sure that other people in the country or nearby aren't using that name or that website address or something like that. So I'll tell you that pretty much every combination of belly, bloom, baby, nesting, moon, sacred, heart, nest, those kinds of words have been used in just about every combination. The trend in business in general is that people are using their own names. So my business would be carriekenner.com, or that'd be my website address, but also my business would be Carrie Kenner, and then it would be, maybe Carrie Kenner's Doula Services or doula training business or something like that. So you can use your own name, but most doulas want to have a kind of a fun and cute name for their business. So the way that you check a business name is to go to your state Department of Business Licensing, and they have usually a trade name search function in their website, and that's how you find that out. And then again, do just a general Google search for the name that you're thinking of and see what kind of things come up. So then the next thing is, once you've decided on a name, and also you can start a business without knowing your name yet, and you can change it. So like in Washington State, you could have a business license under one name, and then let's say you change your business name or you add on another business under a different name, you can add those on to the same license, and it's just the way it appears as doing business as, or DBA, this other new name. So you can actually do a couple of different businesses or services under one business license. And that's particularly true if you're a sole proprietor. So the next thing is, what kind of business license or business structure are you going to be? The most common and the easiest and the cheapest is to be a sole proprietor. And that means that you're the sole owner of your business. And you could actually be a sole proprietor with your legally married partner, but you're probably going to do it on your own as a doula. And for these, you're basically going to fill out an online application. You're going to pay them $35 or thereabouts and ta-da, you are now a sole proprietor, owner of your own business. So it's really easy, really straightforward. The downside of being a sole proprietor is that you don't have any business protection because you and your business are considered the same entity by the government, and legally you and your business are one and the same person. So if somebody were to sue your business or you, they could get your personal assets, your house, your car, if a judgment was found against you and you owed money. So for that reason, a lot of doulas form their business as an LLC, a limited liability corporation. And you could also be an LLP, a limited liability partnership. But that means that you and another person are going into a legal business agreement, and you have to like define who's going to get paid, how you're going to get paid. You'd have to have a joint bank account for your business. It's very complicated and technical and involves lawyers if you're going to be a partnership. So you can do that if you have a true business partner in your doula business. But most doulas, even if they work closely or in partnership with another doula, still have their own business. So what an LLC does and means is that your business is a completely separate entity from you. So if somebody were to sue you for something as a doula, they're suing your business, and it's only the assets that are in that business that somebody could tap into. So it protects your personal assets, which is really helpful if you're married or partnered and part of your assets are part of your partner's assets as well. So a limited liability corporation is a bit more work to set up, and it's more expensive. So you have to draw up documents or fill out documents that get filed with your Secretary of State. And you're usually paying a heftier fee to file those documents. And then every year you have to pay to have those documents refiled with your state. So you are a business that's on file with the state. So it's more expensive that way, but most birth doulas do not carry liability insurance. And this is a way to not feel like you're worried about protecting your personal assets with liability insurance, but instead protecting your personal assets by having your business set up as an LLC. So there's that. And then if you want to get really fancy, let's say you decide that you're going to run your business as a nonprofit organization or an S Corp, which means you're going to make, thousands and thousands and $1 million, and you're going to have employees and all sorts of things. You could set yourself up as an S Corp, which I don't know any doulas who have done that. But I do know doulas who have set themselves up as a nonprofit. There's very stringent guidelines for what qualifies as a nonprofit. But if you intend to basically be serving a community and getting grants and funding, you get to still pay yourself, but it's not your personal business. And you're not trying to make profits as in assets and having like a big business. You could do that if you want some of the many tax protections and kind of benefits of being a nonprofit. So those are some things that you're going to need to look into to decide what your business structure is. Okay, so you figured out your business name, you figured out your business structure, you've gotten your business license. Now that you've gotten a business license, you're a business entity, and business entities get to do a lot of cool things like deduct expenses. They also get to do a lot of not cool things like pay taxes. So two of these things that are going to help you to both deduct expenses and pay taxes is to keep track of all your expenses. And to do that, you're simply anything that you pay for that's related to your business. So it could be going to any additional trainings after your basic doula training. Any additional trainings are a business write-off. So if you decide that you want to be a postpartum doula, the whole postpartum doula training is a write-off. Or I shouldn't say write-off, it's a tax deduction. If you want to go to a placenta encapsulation workshop, that is a business deduction. If you buy supplies for a placenta encapsulation, if you buy birth bag supplies, the bag that your supplies go into, all those things are deductible. You can deduct your certification packet expenses, your membership dues. If you want to subscribe to magazines for doulas or even magazines for parents to see what parents are reading about, those are all deductible. If you fly to a conference, the flight, the meals, the taxi to the airport, all of that, anything on that whole trip are deductible expenses. Things that aren't deductible, if you get a parking ticket or a speeding ticket on your way to a birth, or health insurance or car insurance, mileage, any miles that you drive for your business, so going to prenatal or postpartum visits, or driving to the birth itself, or driving to meetings. If you have a cup of coffee with another doula and you're talking about doula work, that's a deductible expense. So any of those things are deductible as well. And you will need to keep track of your mileage because you get a number of cents per mile deduction from the federal government. So you're going to keep track of all your expenses. And if you turn to page 203 in your handouts, you will see a sample expense sheet. So all these things that are deductions, you need to keep receipts for everything. Every single thing that you pay for, you need a receipt for. And those could be, you could take pictures of them, you could scan them, or you could just stick them in a shoebox. I use one of these kind of accordion folder things. Okay, so there's a slot for each month. And I just stick all my receipts in there, and that's my fancy filing system. But they don't go into that binder until I put them into my spreadsheet. So I have that simple Excel spreadsheet that you see on page 203. You could also just write it on pieces of notebook paper. It's just that then you have to manually add it up. You'll see on page 203 that there's some categories. There's supplies, office expenses, that's things like postage or printing and copying. Utilities, so your cell phone, your internet, advertising, so if you pay anything that's for advertising, and that might be getting business cards printed or running an ad in a local paper. Car expenses, that's where your mileage is going to go. Taxes and licenses, so when you pay your taxes, which are going to be either quarterly or annually, those are deductible expenses. Home business use. If you have a home office, I advise you to not claim it, actually. Well, you could, but the thing is if you have an office that's dedicated only to being your office, it's not where your mother-in-law sleeps when they come into town, it's not where you also have your sewing and craft, set up, it's just for office, you can actually deduct that square footage from your mortgage, your utilities, and everything for your house. But when you go to sell that house, that portion of it, there's all sorts of tax implications involving sale of a house that was used for business. So it's easier to just not claim it because it's probably not going to be that much of a write-off. But you can check with your tax accountant about that. The other thing is it is a red flag for getting audited by the IRS. So it's usually not worth it. Travel. So this is traveling to visits and well, it's actually more things like taxi cabs, ferries, airplanes, buses, things like that, rather than car expenses. Car expenses is usually going to be your mileage, because in your mileage, they're factoring in things like gas, oil, tires, stuff like that. And then we've got meals and entertainment. So if you go to lunch with some doulas, that's a meal expense. If you go to a conference and you're buying all your meals, that's a meal expense. If you go to a conference and you want to go out to the movies or play a game of golf or go to an art museum, those are all deductible expenses if you're out of town for a conference. And what I want you to remember is the people who made up these business deduction rules are basically like white businessmen. And so they made all these laws to benefit them. And it's really kind of stupid that you get to write off all these entertainment things when you're on a business trip, but it's the law, so you can do it. Repair and maintenance, you're probably not going to have anything unless you get your computer fixed or your printer fixed or something like that. Computers and printers are both deductible expenses. Those would be under equipment or supplies. And then education and training and publications, that's where magazine subscriptions and trainings that you go to and any educational offerings, those things are all deductible. And then if you pay rent to an hourly space to meet clients, or if you have a classroom or something like that, and then dues, and that's where your membership dues to DONA or any organizations would go. Okay, so those are the categories, and these categories for the most part match the categories on the tax forms you'd be filling out, and these are taxes at the federal level. So maybe you file a 1040 form for your personal taxes. When you have a business, you're going to attach a Schedule C, and that's the business that is attached to you. And it has these places where you're going to put these expenses that you're going to deduct from your overall income to come up with a smaller income that you have to pay the taxes on. And the taxes for small businesses is around 30 to 35%. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So with your expense sheet, what you're going to do is every time you get money or spend money, you're going to put it in this sheet, and you're just going to kind of have a running tally. And if you then have to pay taxes quarterly, you're going to add up all your income for the quarter, and you're going to pay taxes either to the feds. So some people are paying quarterly, some are annual to the feds. And then your state might also have a state business tax. So Washington State does. And I, for whatever reason, am on a quarterly schedule. So every quarter I pay a tax based on my income for my business. At the state level, you cannot deduct, at least in Washington State, cannot deduct any expenses. So you're paying tax on your gross income. Okay. Then you also might have to get a city or county business license and pay city or county taxes. So everybody wants a piece of your action. So that's how business expenses are tracked. And again, it doesn't have to be fancy. Some people have software like Quicken or QuickBooks, and those are other ways that you can also keep track of business expenses and income in a kind of more sophisticated software program, but you don't need it as a doula, okay? So now you've figuring out how you track expenses. Other things you want to consider as a doula are marketing. And so we talked quite a bit about how you might let people know that you're a doula and advertise. And most doulas don't spend a lot on advertising, but they're thinking a lot about advertising. And so you might have your website where people who are shopping online could find you. All of the business expenses associated with your website, everything from if you pay a designer to design it, or to design a logo. If you're buying your domain, which is carriekenner.com or bigbellyservices.com, that's your domain. You have to buy that every year to keep that as yours. And then you have to pay a website host, and that's the people that put your website out there in the universe so that people can find it. So those are typically annual expenses that are also business deductions, but expenses for you as well. And then if you're going to have flyers printed, you could print them out at home, or you could pay some, Kinko's or something like that. So advertising and marketing is also going to be your responsibility and part of what you have to do as a business owner. And it's something you have to kind of continually do. You don't just like do one marketing thing and then call it good. You're continually finding new ways to network with people who might refer to you, to get your name out there, to get your image. And for some people, it's their face. For others, it's their logo or their colors or something. But to get yourself out in your community so that people can find you. So we've got some marketing that needs to be done. And then there's kind of the lifestyle that goes along with being a doula. And that has to do a lot with self-care. So we talked about kind of how do you take care of yourself after a long birth, the necessity of having other doulas to debrief with, developing collaborative relationships with other people, and so that they're referring to you and you're referring to them. That's kind of part of our self-care as well. and figuring out what do you need to do to keep yourself awake for a long period of time, and what do you need to do to recover from that, and what do you need to do just to keep a baseline good healthy status for yourself. And so usually it's some good exercise and a good diet and some body care and self time, time with friends, time with your sweetheart, time with your kids, and how are you going to be balancing all of that? So self-care, support from your family and your community. There's no such thing as a doula that stands alone. There's the doula, and then there's the people that she lives with who get used to this kind of wacky coming and going. And then there's people in your community, family or friends, like maybe your mom calls you every Tuesday morning, and some Tuesday she calls you and you don't answer because you're at a birth, and she calls you Tuesday night, she calls you Wednesday morning, and she starts to worry. So how are you going to be communicating and helping your family to understand that you can kind of disappear for a day or two when you go to a long birth? And how is your family and friends going to take it when you don't show up to your own birthday party or their birthday party or a lunch date, or there's just the opportunity to have to cancel things kind of at the last minute? And are they going to be understanding and supportive? And most people are. And for some people, it's impossible for their family, or it gets old, and sometimes you feel some resentment from things. So, just thinking about how are you going to communicate this? How are you going to handle that? How are you going to repair damage? And how are you going to reconcile that within yourself? Because it can get challenging to be leaving your friends and family repeatedly to go care for kind of strangers. And to do that willingly and lovingly without resentment. So self-care is an important part of the lifestyle aspect. And then just having flexibility that you can go to a birth in the middle of something, and that you're showered, your hair is clean, you can brush your teeth, your feet don't smell, you've got a change of clothes as well as clothes that are going to be appropriate to wear to a birth. You've got food. If you've got dietary restrictions that may not be met at hospitals or people's houses, that you've got the ability to grab the foods that you need and have enough quantity to last you for a while. Other lifestyle things, of course, for those of you who have children, is arranging childcare on the spot, overnight, for long periods of time, and appointments with healthcare providers that you're not going to be able to give 24-hour notice. Could you have arrangements set up that they're going to waive any cancellation fees because it's just not an option for you? So these are all the different things about the doula lifestyle, and not being drunk ever. So ever when you're on call. And again, you're not on call just for the due date, you're on call for the weeks before and after. So most doulas do not drink. They just never get drunk. So they might have a glass of wine with dinner every night, but not after they've gotten a call from a client who says, I think I'm in labor. Then they're not drinking. But otherwise, they're having a glass of wine. Let's say that they're sitting at dinner having a glass of wine, and a client calls and says, I might be in labor. They're going to stop drinking. And by the time the client calls them and needs them, they're not gonna, the alcohol works out of one's system. People don't stay, intoxicated forever. So it's a timing kind of thing. So not doing drugs, unless you're on some wild, crazy vacation, and then you're off call and you can do whatever you want to. So doulas do like to party, but when they're off call. So let's see, what else do I want to tell you about the business aspects? You might want to have a invoice to kind of bill people, which is just a formal way of reminding people when their payments are due. And there's a sample of that on page 204. And then you can also use that to use as a receipt to give to your clients when they've paid you. You're going to put the date of the payment in there. And people can use that to try to get reimbursed from their insurance company for their doula services. And insurance companies typically don't reimburse, but sometimes people will appeal a denial and say, my doula saved me a lot of money, so you should reimburse me. And if people want to get reimbursed by their health savings account, which is an account that people usually have through their employer that is pre-taxed savings for medical expenses, they might need a receipt to show the expenses for them to get reimbursed from that account. We talked about setting fees in our training. On page 205 is an article that I wrote about what goes into a doula's fees and why do doulas charge what they do. And if you haven't read that already, it's a good thing to read so that you can figure out what your fees are going to be, what's reasonable for you, it feels right, and also be able to explain that to other people. Other thing that is a really nice thing to write is a mission or vision statement. And this is like what you want to do with your business. This is not, your service package that's on your website, but it's like, why are you a doula? What's the point of this? What's your bigger picture? And it typically has things to do with society or humankind or your community, what you want your business being a doula to accomplish. And those are things that speak to people's hearts. They're also things that's a vision, it's a kind of a goal for you. It keeps you tracked to why are you doing this? And those are things that can be really helpful for anybody who's starting a business to just keep in mind, why are they doing this work? Because sometimes it feels like a lot of work. Sometimes it feels extremely rewarding. Other times a little bit more challenging. So that mission and vision are the things that you can hold up in front of you to keep you going. And some people, when they're starting a business, well, most people, not necessarily doulas, will create a business plan. And you can find business plan templates on the internet. And there are things that ask you to think about what is your mission and your vision. What's your goal for the first year? What's your 5-year goal, your 10-year goal? And they ask a lot of really detailed things about who's your target market and your market research and lots of stuff that doesn't pertain to being a doula. But the practice of completing a business plan is going to get you thinking about things that you probably didn't think about being a doula, but things to get you thinking about starting a business that can be really helpful. So I encourage you to download a business plan, fill it out, ignore the stuff that, like if they're talking about inventory and write-offs and stuff, ignore that stuff. It's not going to apply to you, but still do the rest of it because it's a nice way to organize all your thoughts about what is this business about and what is it for. Let's see, anything else I wanted to talk about in terms of business? Owning a business, starting a business, bookkeeping, marketing business. That's pretty much it. So, as I said before, if you have any questions, please email me and the group so we can all benefit from your questions and the answers. And the business part is actually one of my favorite things about what I've kind of created. And I actually offer a 6-hour business skills for doulas class that gets into great detail about all these things. So you're welcome to come to that. I think the next one is next month in October, and it's also available via video conference if you can't attend in person. And then I also do a 12-month business mentoring program for doulas who really want focus, structure, community, getting their businesses off the ground. And it's a 12-month program. It's really cool. And I start a cohort every 6 months, and the next cohort starts in November. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, you can go to my website and find the Jumpstart Your Doula Career program and read about it. And then if you want to talk with me more about it, you can sign up for a 15-minute conversation where I'll tell you all about the pricing and exactly what you get and what it's like if you're interested in really getting your business off to a good start. So I love the business part. All right. I love you all too. So I'm going to bring this one to a close. And next up is certification. So see you soon. Bye.